mean, the numbers ain't going to lie to you. I mean, obviously, when you average margin of victory is by 23 points a game, you have to start saying, where do they rank in NCAA history? Was it impressive? Absolutely, but it also told me how down the college game is.
Maybe, yep.
You know, I mean, I've never seen this before. I mean, why are they winning by an average of 23 points in the NCAA tournament?
So you think it's more about the lack of competition?
The lack of competition just wasn't there. I mean, didn't have the star power. I can't even tell you who's going to be a top pick as far as did they even play against any top picks in the whole tournament. And so, I mean, while impressive, I will say that because of the college game being as down as it was like second nature for me to watch this game after what went on in the girls' tournament. So, you know, I kind of just watched it, eating chips, walking around the kitchen, whereas the girls' game, I was glued to the seat. You know,
I'm with you.
I was lollygagging around, but it was definitely impressive, especially when you talk about this team went back-to-back. So we have to start talking about, you know, where this team ranks as far as greatest teams at some point.
All right, we will get into that. Split screened it?
Split screened it. Dodgers.
You split screen.
Yeah, I had the split screen. Once the Dodgers went off, then I found something else to watch in the split screen. Look, it was fun a little bit because it was exciting just to see them jumping around and, you know, talking a little trash and whatnot, a couple dunks here and there. They didn't obviously have an answer for Zach Edey. He was dominant, you know, as a big. But they only, in Purdue, for instance, they only shot the three 7 times in the entire game. It was 1 for 7. Where you look up in UConn was pulling it, they shot it 22 times. So it was almost like their game plan, Purdue's game plan, was destined to fail against UConn no matter what they tried to do. It just didn't, you know, you tried, at least I did, I tried to get into it as much as I could. But like Paul said, it's the men's game. It's somewhat watered down. There was no star power. I mean, other than the people, other than the pregame, halftime, and postgame show, that's where all the stars were at.
Yeah,
with Charles Barkley and company, that was the stars.
Yep.
And so,
in fact, they even had Drew Brees on before the game from Purdue, so that was star power, and he played football.
And then you got a chance to see the former Purdue coach there and stuff. So it was kind of like, all right, I tipped my hat off to him, and I know what Paul is saying about the start to have this conversation about the greatest team ever in college basketball. I got certainly a couple teams that'll probably sweep the floor with them. We're going to get there.
We'll get there.
And so, in the end, I'm happy for Hurley. I'm happy for UConn. But in all honesty, Skip, it was not. You could just feel our energy this morning talking about that versus South Carolina and Iowa. It was just a different energy level, mindset,
or
excitement.
Iowa and LSU.
Or Iowa and LSU.
Iowa and UConn.
Or Iowa and UConn.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What I saw last night was extremely impressive relative to the competition in this year's tournament, because I can make a strong case that no team in any single NCAA tournament has ever been better than the field, and this team was better than the field, because I can just back it up with that point differential. So I can make a case that relative to the competition, this was the single most dominant college team in history. But to your point, and we're going to get to here in just a few minutes, if you start ranking it all time against all the other teams that won championships, it's going to suffer by comparison. But if you just look at last night, think about this. You did have the best team in the country against clearly the second best team in the country all year long, because Purdue, all year long, it was very clear they were the second best team because they had the first best player. They had a back-to-back two-time National Player of the Year in Zach Edey, who played like a Player of the Year last night. I mean, he threw up 37. What do you have on the boards? 10 or so? I mean, it was highly, 10 rebounds.
10 boards.
37 and 10.
Be nice for him to make his free throws.
Okay. Well, he's not that, and he doesn't shoot any threes, so he doesn't pose any threat like so many of the new NBA bigs. Even Chet Holmgren comes along, and he's stroking threes, and obviously now Wemby, now that he's got his legs underneath him, he's starting to make threes. So now the new wave in the NBA is 7-foot-something who can take you outside and drain threes on you. Well, that's not Zach Edey. So I wasn't all that impressed with him because what UConn did was they just said, you can have all you want, big dog, eat all night. Because all you can eat will be 2s and 1s because you'll make a few free throws, but you'll make mostly 2s. And I thought he had to work pretty hard against Klingon for his 2s, but he showed me some footwork. He showed me a left hand. He showed me a little bit of a jump hook, you know, which was pretty impressive.
I don't think he made a shot outside of 6 foot.
No, but that's who he's been. That's why he was back-to-back player of the year, because he was man among boys. And by the way, he stayed the whole way at Purdue. So how old is he, 22 or what? You know, he's
8-year senior?
Yeah, he's one of those. Okay, so here's what got me about UConn last night. UConn actually brought its B game. UConn didn't play very well last night, and they ho-hummed Purdue, because look what UConn did. They're 6 of 22 from 3. 6 of 22. If I told you guys that at the end of the show yesterday, Paul wasn't here, but if I told Keyshawn, if I'd said, okay, I know for a fact that UConn's going to go 6 of 22 from 3, you'd say, uh-oh, I smell an upset here, right? To your point, Keyshawn, the other team, the second best team in the country, shot 1 for 7. It's because they couldn't even get a shot off, because they got suffocated by UConn's guards defense, because UConn can flat out guard you from end to end, and they were all over them to the point they couldn't get a shot. I'm going to show you one. The only 3 that Purdue made was a Braden Smith 3, and once upon a time, he's the Indiana Player of the Year. You know, he's the high school Player of the Year. Here's at the end of the half, and he goes up, and it's highly contested, and he goes crazy. After he makes it, he goes running, looking to his like that was a huge thing that he finally made a 3. And again, it wasn't a wide open 3; it was a highly contested 3, and he felt like he had won the national championship because he actually made a 3. Okay, that's 1 out of 7. I'm going to remind you, Purdue during the regular season was 2nd in the nation in three-point shooting to Kentucky. I don't know where that got Kentucky. It got them out because they lost to a 14 seed, but they were 2nd in the regular season in three-point shooting at 40.4%. Well, help me out. 1 of 7 ain't exactly 40.4%. So they got up against 3 guards who 2 of them are going to play in the NBA, Tristan Newton and Stephon Castle. And then Cam Spencer is the classic college guard because he was a transfer from Rutgers, but he's just the classic great college player that you want on your team. I don't think he can make it in the NBA. I could be wrong. Maybe he'll find a way.
He's a hustle man.
He's a hustle man, but he's 6'4", and he made some smart plays, and he made some hustle plays, and he made a couple of nice shots, like up and under shots. And you say, okay, you know why? Because he's 24 years old and he's a graduate student.
Right.
So he's man among boys.
Another 8-year senior, huh?
Okay, well, there you go. But they're loaded. And then Caravan, I don't know if you've watched UConn, but I have all year. Caravan's going to be an NBA player, and he's 6'8", and he scored 5 points last night. He had a terrible game. He shot 1 of 6 from 3. And Caravan, I checked this out this morning, he had 8 games this year of over 20 points. What if he'd gone off last night? None of them really went off last night. Tristan Newton had a nice game, but didn't have an all-time great game. But defensively, they are so NBA loaded. Not that they're going to dominate the NBA, but they got 4 or 5 guys who are going to make it in the NBA. Well, nobody else does. And that's the point of this year's tournament. They just don't have it. So in this game, it was a mismatch of defense versus Purdue's offense because it's Zach Edey or bust, and they busted. And in the second half, look what the guards did. The UConn guards outscored Connecticut's guards 46-17. Well, that's the game right there. So Edey can eat all he wants, and sorry, it's all UConn all the time. So they
it was
just
only a 6-point lead at halftime, though, right?
Yeah.
It was. I didn't. And it never got back down to single digits after that. I think it went up to 11, and then the rest was history. I thought Purdue played right into the hands of UConn, especially from a defensive standpoint, because like you said, Skip, they were reluctant to even shoot the 3. I mean, you could at least try.
They couldn't find one.
The big fella was so good, though. They just tried to play old school basketball.
They did.
They kept throwing it to him. He shot high percentage. I mean, he was getting a layup damn near every time.
Okay, but their game plan was, as all the UConn players said after the game, what the reason Purdue destroyed teams before was if you collapse 3 guys in on Edey, then all of them are going to be sitting out there sniping wide open threes. Right. And they said no, because Klingon can at least hold his own. I mean, he didn't get annihilated inside. So it was mostly one-on-one defense. And then the guards just stayed on the guards outside and said, you can't have these shots. Okay. So
what that tells me, it was more about the coaching. It was more about.
It was brilliant.
Dan Hurley.
It was brilliant.
I mean, that's what college is all. That's what college basketball to me is all about. The coaching. I mean, that's who the stars are, and it was evident. I mean, give it to the big man. Make sure these guys don't get off, and we know, But when we talk about being impressed with it, I was impressed with Dan Hurley.
I was too.
I was impressed with him more so.
And by the way,
players.
Paul, to your point, college basketball is a coach's game.
It's a coach's game.
Your game is a player's game. The NBA is a player's game.
Yeah. Obviously, the coaches are stars. When you hear about the coaches, Bill Self, Rick Pitino, we know the coaches. More so, I know more college coaches than I know NBA coaches.
That's true.
Like seriously. Point. So, it's always going to be about the coaching. And, the funny thing, they asked them about Kentucky. They
did.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But coaching is everything. You get the right coach in the right situation, you're going to have a shot at a national championship.
Yeah. By the way, Dan Hurley last night, a year ago, I was only vaguely aware of him because I just thought of him as Bobby Hurley's little brother. I think they're about a year apart.
Right.
And all of a sudden last night, he's like the star of stars. He's hot dogging and playing to the cameras on the, on the bench area, going crazy because he became a big star, but he became Connecticut's biggest star, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, by the way, when you were in school at Kansas, how good was college basketball then? What do you remember about the competition of it?
Well, the competition at college was a lot better because, the players stayed around a little longer. Kevin started the trend out of high school my senior year, but this is an impressive win. I'm not taking.
How long did you stay?
I stayed 3 years.
3 years.
I did 3 years at Kansas University. The best thing I ever. Best experience, college basketball, best place to play college basketball for one.
And how far did you get in the tournament?
We went as far, it's so hard to win. So we went to the Elite Eight my first year, Sweet 16 the second year, and we lost second round my junior year. It's that hard to win. So this is definitely impressive. But there are some teams out there I look back at, they win by 23, that I'm taking all day over this UConn team. They didn't win 2 championships, but there's some teams that I'll take over this team.
You mean historically or this year? Not this year. Yeah. You mean
not this year. Not this year. No teams this year. Historically, there's some teams that I'll take over the Huskies.
So in your college 3 years, can you remember stars you ran up against?
When I was in school, you had Ray Allen was in college. Yep. Allen Iverson was in college.
At Georgetown.
You had Marcus Camby was in college. Antoine Walker was in college.
Yeah, O'Bannings, the UCLA team.
Yeah, the O'Bannings. You had so many different.
Arizona had the team.
You had Hall of Famers that was in college. Vince Carter.
Was in college.
Stephon Marbury. These guys were in college. So, see, the competition was stiff back then. I didn't see the star power in this year's college ranks. I didn't see UConn have to go against a guy who was the best player or projected to be the #1 pick. Ide was the National Player of the Year, but he's probably going to be a late first rounder.
He's ranked in the middle, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. So, just the competition wasn't there for me. So that's why the interest wasn't there for me, because over the years, I haven't been into the college game since probably Zion Williamson was there. I watched Bronny this year. I had more interest in watching Bronny this year than a team like UConn who went under the radar, a team like Purdue who went under the radar all year long, and these were the top 2 teams. I had other interest in other teams because of the star power just wasn't there.
Okay. Yet, at the end of last night's game, it hit me that UConn is really well coached.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love to watch them execute their offense because it's a thing of beauty. The ball moves, they get open shots, and all 5 of the guys on the floor are capable of hurting you.
Yeah.
And they'll take turns hurting you. So I'm thinking, this is late last night, I'm thinking, did we underestimate this team? Because I haven't really thought about the team all year long. We didn't talk about the team all year long. is it possible that the Caitlin Clark effect
Was so great.
made us underrate UConn because they were off our radar? We just didn't talk about them. We've talked a whole lot more about Caitlin Clark and Dawn Staley and Angel Reese than we have about Klingon and Edie.
That stuff is boring, though, Skip.
Yeah.
That stuff we watched last night, you had to force yourself to watch it. It's like I'm starved to death, and I really don't want to eat this, but I'm going to eat it because it's there, and I got to eat it. So I have to watch it. Because if I wasn't on the show with you and Paul coming in the morning, I promise to God I would watch it.
This will not be barbershop talk.
No, not at all. Not at all. I wouldn't even, I mean, I had no interest.
Unless it sparks a barbershop debate of, well, what was the greatest team ever in college basketball?
To me, the greatest team
we
ever.
said we're going to get there.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
right.
You
We'll
can
get there.
save it. But I'm saying that's a barbershop topic that may come off this, but nobody's going to be talking about UConn as the greatest team ever, right?
I don't think so.
So, Keyshawn, late in the game, I tweeted, I miss Dawn Staley and Caitlin Clark, because I do. I miss them. It's not like I'd much rather watch that than this.
You think I'm joking? I split screened it.
Yeah.
I literally, when I was talking to Nick, like, doing it, I'm like, Nick, I'm watching it. I'm watching my producer. I'm like, I'm watching the 8th inning, man. Let me get to the 8th.
Okay.
It's just, it's one of those deals. And I'm trying to think, how could men's college basketball get back to the 80s and the 90s of college basketball when I was watching, or the early 2000s when I was watching, when we talked about the Michigan State teams, or we talked about the Kentucky teams, or even some of the Miami teams that were good. I mean, like, we don't even have those type of conversations. North Carolina, Duke, we don't have those conversations about these teams anymore.
Well, it lines up with the players, Key, because not only are we talking about this is probably going to be the weakest draft in our lifetime.
It will be.
Our lifetime.
I agree.
So that goes hand in hand, that there's no players out there that drew us in. And now we look at the draft like, who's going to be the number one?
Let me ask you this,
we
Paul.
don't have that great American right now. That's what it's telling me. We don't have the great American players anymore.
Do you think that so much off-season basketball is hurt the college game? Meaning, like, kids play so much of off-season basketball that has actually hurt the college basketball game?
Well, it goes exactly.
Instead of helping it?
No, you said it right there. They play basketball. They don't practice it.
Okay.
They play back. You need to practice the game.
Because when y'all played, if I remember correctly, you didn't play. They didn't play. They come to UCLA, they get some run in the summertime, a few games.
You got
and that's pretty much it.
So me just
and they go back to college.
So, like, listen, so my connect with the newer generation and what I hear and from what I see, these younger players that's coming up now, they play in all these AAU exhibitions. They travel the world. They have all these caps, USA, Nike, Adidas. And when you look at the players from overseas in Europe, they play one game a week.
Yeah.
They practice 5-6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. So they're developing their skills a little bit more while we're playing, and we're working on YouTube moves and Instagram social media movement where they're actually playing, getting better, playing competition, and that's why you see in their game advance, and they're the better players in our league today.
Well, I mean, I can make a case that the two best players in your league right now are Joker and Luka. I can make that case, right?
Absolutely. Or you can say Giannis or Embiid.
That wouldn't be a case. That would be factual.
That's what I'm saying.
Especially from a scoring standpoint.
Right. And neither one of them are what you would call explosively athletic, and neither one of them are leapers. And I don't think Luka can jump. Can dunk. I don't think he can.
No, he can dunk.
So it just goes to tell you that they're putting more work on their skills.
Yeah. No, it is.
Where we're worried about the weights and athleticism and running, but they're more skilled than us.
They are.
I mean, it's just obvious in the shows.
Right. So once upon a time, I was in New Orleans sitting on press row, courtside, 1982 national championship game, and I'm looking out on a floor that features Michael Jordan and James Worthy and Sam Perkins on one side, and Patrick Ewing and Sleepy Floyd on the other side, and it is the most star power I've ever seen on a college court at one time. Jordan was just a freshman, obviously, but he hit the shot that won the game. Who?
Kenny Smith.
He was on that team. Yep. Kenny Smith.
Was he? I don't even
think
remember
so.
if
Yeah,
Smith
definitely was
team.
on that team.
I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is, and it went down to the wire, and that, what was his name, Freddie Brown lost his mind and threw it to James Worthy as if it was his teammate, but it was 63-62, and it was the greatest national championship game I had ever seen, but it featured stars, and trust me, the world tuned in to watch that game, and the barbershop was buzzing about that game the next day. Not this one.
No,
So
not at all. This one's going to get swept under the rug, and
Yep.
we're going to move on and
next, right?
see what's going on. Right.
Barbershop when we talking about this.
Yeah, well, the barbershop might be talking about this game by tomorrow. Thanks for watching, Undisputed fans. Do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.